different brands might be willing to pay you different amounts for the same scope of work? It's because you need to be charging different amounts depending on the brand's goals. Every proposal should be different. Every proposal should be bespoke. Rather than having this like prefix menu that you just say, hey brand, which one do you want? These are the 5 packages I work with every brand, pick one. That does not feel great. The point of a pitch is not to get the deal. That's not the point of a pitch. The point is to...
Justin, welcome to the show.
Dude, round 2. I feel so honored. I'm excited about this, man.
How about it? Not many get the repeat invite, so...
Yeah, why did I get a repeat invite? Like tell me how awesome I am. Like, I'm kind of hoping for some compliments.
I just think you're a treasure. You're a
Dude,
sweet treat in my podcast recording career. I'm going
to put that in my bio. Treasure
of sweet treat. I think that's it. I actually was going to save this compliment till the end, but since we just teed it off...
Since I just shamelessly asked for it at the beginning,
I might as well just dive into it. I saw a video a while back, and it might have been a video where you were talking with someone and they were just going to analyze the business's finances or something. And they asked you what one of your priorities were with your business. And you're like, I want it to be fun. Like, I want my business to have like some joyfulness and it to be exciting and fun. And I was like, wow, that encapsulates one, what you do so well is make things fun. But the other part is like, well, why don't I want to have a fun business too? Like, why don't people want to have fun in their own businesses? It's always like, you got to grind and you got to wake up at 5. And Justin's like, I'm going to have fun. And I'm like, dude, that's great.
Dude, quick anecdote about that. So I was filming some ads for a challenge that I'm running soon yesterday. And I walked over to like this area of my property where it's like really lush kind of forests and stuff. And I was just doing the stupidest videos you can possibly think of, where like I would just like come on the screen and be like, stop, like this type of thing, like totally like trying to like be like thumb stopping. And I sent it to my operations person and she was like, I love that you are making yourself laugh doing this. And I think that like it's so stupid that it's so hilarious. And I told her, it's funny, I was like, I've learned over the years that like if I'm making myself laugh at how stupid it is, it's probably good. And so I just try to pull that thread all the time.
I think that's the way to go. And people can tell if you're having fun or not. So, Hey, kudos to you. Enough with the compliments.
I appreciate it, dude. Yeah. Let's get into the hard hitting questions now. Like,
come
on.
Knock it off. Come on now. Got your book here. We're going to be covering a lot of this.
Dude.
But before we dive into some of the tactics here, I do want to talk about part of the origin story is you were thrifting some goods and then flipping them on eBay way back when. I want to know, any of those skills from that time transfer over into negotiation, value spotting, patience, any of that? You're a textbook flipper.
I was a textbook flipper. I was an art flipper for 2 years as well. And let me tell you the one major thing that I learned that changed my whole life, which was that there are ways to make money in this world that do not come from a paycheck. That it seems like a stupid or simple realization, but like up until that point in my life, in my early mid-20s, that was the track I thought I was going to be on, was like, the corporate job and the tradition. I did the whole schooling, engineering and all that. And I thought that's what the trajectory was going to be. But when I just got this itch to kind of do the side hustler type thing and making some extra money on the side, there was one huge score of a sculpture that I bought at a local auction that I flipped on eBay. And that was the very first moment where I was like, wow, I want this feeling. I want this feeling all the time, because it was like there was a direct correlation between my willingness to put in the work to learn that there might be an arbitrage there. So like a studiousness aspect to it, but also the thrill of it being uncapped, where like if I could figure out a way to scale this, like, wow, I could make way more money, wildly more money than I could ever make in like a 9-to-5. And so to me, that was what came from a lot of those skunkworks little side hustle-y things, was just the confidence in myself to be like, maybe my life could be something else.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like you saw the potential of what could be. And you made it happen.
100%.
You got the itch.
Dude. I got it.
During that time, I also think, hey, don't you tell me if this is true. You were getting your MBA while the YouTube channel was launching. I'm curious also during that time, did academia ever touch on the creator economy, or did they just like get anything wrong? Because one, it was a different time, but two, I feel like academia kind of they could be a little, you know, behind the ball on some of the cutting edge stuff.
If I describe to you how difficult it is to get a new textbook approved to be taught in a curriculum at a school, you would absolutely like lose it. And that was one of the biggest challenges, is a lot of the textbooks that are being taught are 20, 25 years old. And so it's absolutely was a running joke that like, are we ever going to do a business case, business plan in the same way that like we're having to in these classes? Not really. The grand irony is that my concentration in business school was entrepreneurship.
Nice.
Because that was what I was interested in. But like a lot of the things, like when are you ever required to submit a 50-page business plan to like prove that you're worthy? Maybe if you're trying to go get a line of credit or something at a bank, like Chase or Wells Fargo or something. There's something to say about like sitting down and being intentional and thinking through, okay, what does the next 3 to 5 years of this business look like, and trying to game that out and make plans and backup plans and all that. But like if you're just sitting there trying to pixel perfect change the words on your business plan, what are we even doing here? And so I think that just the game has fundamentally changed.
Definitely, certainly seems so. I'm not going to say I've never made a business plan. That's not true. But I've never submitted a business plan to somebody else for my own business. Like I may ask for feedback, but it's not like exactly what you said. I'm creating this thing to submit for approval to start my own thing, which I think the creator economy negates a lot of that. It's like, well, if you have an iPhone, you might be able to just turn on that camera and make something happen here.
I think that this is a weird thread to pull, but just being able to throw up a checkout page, like a Stripe link or a Gumroad page or, whatever checkout it is, and literally have people pay you money for things, has lowered the barrier so tremendously for people to just make money, especially on the internet, in a way that just was never fundamentally possible before. Now, of course, if we're talking about venture scale businesses, that's a different thing.
Right.
And you're doing really hard stuff and hardware and going to the moon, and it's obviously a different thing, and you need to be more thoughtful about your strategy, of course. But like for most people, if they're looking to if they're listening to this and they're trying to like get started, there's really not much more you need than convincing someone that you can help them accomplish something, and they'll pay you money for that. And I think that this is like it seems simple, but hard at the same time.
Yeah. Being able to position yourself in a way that makes you trustworthy and, like you mentioned, have the credibility to actually provide that transformation. That's for sure pretty valuable. I'm going to jump over to something else. You reference Annie Duke's idea of resulting in your book, basically judging yourself based on how the deal turned out instead of how you played it. How do you personally shake that off when a negotiation doesn't land? You gave a great anecdote in the book, but I imagine there's probably a handful of times this may have happened.
So first of all, you're the first person that's ever asked me about this anecdote
nice.
From the book. So I applaud you for that, because I love talking about this.
Come on.
So for folks that haven't read the book or are interested in this topic, so Annie Duke, she wrote this amazing, she has several books, but this book called Thinking in Bets is one of my favorites. And she talks about this concept called resulting, so she's a professional poker player. And so there's this tendency that a lot of people have, not just in poker, but in life, where something good happens and you're like, I'm a genius. Like, of course this good thing happened to me because I'm a genius. But oftentimes we don't assign enough serendipity, good luck, good timing to the fact that this good thing happened. Similarly, if bad things happen, we have a tendency to say, oh, well, that decision I made must have been bad because it led to this bad outcome. When in reality, you could have made a sound decision. You could have made a good decision and something bad could have happened. There's other conditions, macroeconomic conditions, like challenge, other factors outside your control. And this has happened a lot to my wife and I over the years when we have kind of been honing our negotiation chops when collaborating with brands, because they basically never tell you why they passed or even why they decided to move forward with you. Because I think a lot of people don't realize when it comes to sponsorships, brands are oftentimes, if they decide that they're going to run some sort of campaign, they reach out to like 50 people or 30, 40 people trying to find the best group of people for the job. And so your negotiation skills could have been terrible, but they decided to move forward with you for a wildly different reason. And they may not even have told you that. They may have said, oh, we really liked, Justin, what he represents because he was part of some social action, social justice project back then. He charged a ton of money for this quote, but like, we really want to be involved with him because of this. And so that's just like a random example, but like, you never really know what is the reason that you actually got the deal. And so I do think it's like super important to be introspective about like the deals, both that you win and learn, and frankly, try to ask as many kind of interesting questions of like, hey, so I'm so glad that we're working together, but can you tell me a little bit more about why you decided to move forward with me? And like, what was it about my proposal that was interesting to you? And so this whole idea of resulting, being curious about the outcome, whether good or bad, can be hugely valuable to you in your life, both personally and professionally. The example that Annie Duke gives in the book is like, she thinks that life is much more like poker than chess. And if we're looking at two different games, chess is you know all of your opponent's positions at all times. You could see their pieces, right? So it's not like there's any sort of hidden information other than maybe some mistakes that your opponent makes. But in poker, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? It's like what cards are in your opponent's decks, what cards are still in the dealer's decks. When someone folds, they may not turn over their hands if it's that type of game. And so there's all this uncertainty that's much more like life. And so I think having this curiosity, this introspection, when anything good or bad happens to you, can be pretty powerful.
I'm very happy you touched on the poker part, because when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true, especially in the negotiation portion of putting deals together, like why brands are pushing back on something like you mentioned, or exactly what you mentioned, why they move forward. It's like, there's so much going on the other side of this that I just know I don't have access to. And that leads me to this question, Justin. I know you've had access to some brand side conversations that creators maybe have never heard. Is there, or what's one political or even internal dynamic that happens inside of brands that might derail those influencer deals?
What a great question. Oftentimes, a lot of the more traditional brands are very risk averse. And they do audits of people's persona on the internet, let's call it, to ensure that there's some sort of risk mitigation conducted such that if they move forward and partner with someone and their audience later goes and digs into their MySpace posts from 8th grade and blows it up all over TikTok or X or something like that, that the brand doesn't get embroiled in that controversy. And this has happened many, many times, even to, not to my wife and I personally, but to when I was running my influencer agency. This happened to a bunch of the people that we worked with, where they got embroiled in some sort of controversy, and then the brand's customer service lines get flooded. The brand's social media posts, comment sections get flooded. How dare you partner with this person? They did this. Is this the type of people you want representing your brand? Like this type of thing. And so like, it's like a real public relations crisis or something that they have to game out. And so these things, there were people that actively lost deals because when I was running my agency, because of this kind of digital forensics test that we had to do, and the brand just decided we're not going to test them with a 10-foot pole. That's the under the surface one that a lot of people don't know about. But there's actually even something simpler, man, which is that brands and companies oftentimes choose not to move forward with people simply based on their professionalism. Or let's call it lack of professionalism, lack of communication. Because again, remember, they're probably working with 30, 40 different people. And if you're the one who's taking 3 or 4 days to respond to every message, you just become gum on their shoe. You develop this reputation in their mind as someone that they have to constantly micromanage and chase. And they have no time for that. They have no appetite for that. And especially if you're trying to ask for more money or negotiate and all this stuff. No, they're not gonna tolerate that. Versus you were amazing. You were on it. You were sending everything ahead of time. You were so kind when things came up that weren't anticipated. Those are the people that they went to bat for internally, even without the creator asking them to do that, because they knew it was going to make their life easier. So when you ask, the question is like, what are people saying behind the scenes? It's a lot of this stuff. It's like, are they pleasant? Are they kind? Are they, if we come back and ask for a 5-second voiceover change, are they going to ask for $10,000 more? It seems crazy, but like this stuff happens.
Yeah. I'm going to botch it, but there's a line somewhere toward the end of your book where you're talking about like the bar has never been so low, and it's like, just turn your stuff in on time, hit your deliverables, respond to emails, like all of these like basic things. And it's like, man, that's all those little things do really make a big difference. And I also know there's probably some do not work with again lists. Do you think those are reversible in any way?
I want to touch on something real quick, is like the fact that the bar is low. I want to make sure that I'm not coming across condescending, because I actually have empathy for people who are in these situations, because a lot of creators, a lot of influencers have never had a real job. They came out of school or came out of high school, came out of college. They built up this social media presence kind of surprisingly, started getting opportunities, and they never really had to develop kind of the soft skills, email etiquette, understanding what it's like being in kind of a business relationship. And so I actually have empathy. And it's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, to try to help people understand the other side of it. Because frankly, like if you open up TikTok or you open up X and you're just like a casual creator, a casual person, and what do you come across? What is 97% of content on the internet related to this stuff? It's, this brand is trying to screw me. I got in a deal with them and they didn't pay me on time, or they're offering free stuff, as compensation, and they're making billions of dollars. Here, look at their stock price, this type of thing. And so what is the impression that the average everyday creator is going to have about brand partnerships? If this is all you see is, wow, brand partnerships are terrifying. Yeah. I need to be on the defensive every time I'm interacting with a brand. And I just constantly was seeing these videos over and over and over. And I was just like, okay, am I on crazy pills or something? Because I've done literally over 500 deals personally with my wife, thousands through the agency, and I can count on literally one hand the amount of deals that went south. And I was like, someone needs to like come to the other side of this conversation and be like, no, actually brand partnerships are awesome. They can be great if you're a human, if you have empathy, right? All those things. And so really at the end, it's just important to acknowledge this piece of it, is that I have empathy. And to answer your question, can you get off of these like do not hire lists? It's possible, but you have to truly illustrate to these brands, especially if you screwed something up in the beginning, that you have see the light and you're more professional and you're more communicative. What it's going to actually take is proactivity. So you coming to them probably with some sort of comprehensive proposal or pitch and saying like, hey, because they're probably not going to come to you proactively after what they just experienced. Yeah. And so it's going to take you coming and being like, here's what I would love to do for you. Boom, 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 boom. Here's why it's valuable for you. Here's what it seems like is important to you right now. Here's how I can help you move the needle on this business objective. That's the way to get off the list.
That's awesome. Justin, I'm so happy you clarified that point as well. Because I do think there are also things that are innate to industries that are, they're just innate in that way. So coming from never having to learn those soft skills, that definitely makes sense. Why maybe even culturally this has become to be part of the process. And now it's just reversing the thinking on how to approach those brands. That's great.
The thing that I think is even more exciting, like a lot of people, I talk with a lot of people about the implications of AI and what it's going to mean to the creator economy and how it's going to affect, especially brand partnerships and so on. And I actually think like creators who have this mindset of professionalism and so on should be thrilled, because now that everyone can write a fairly good email, to sound professional with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever model, that's why the in-person soft skills, whether it's meeting the brand in person, getting on a phone call with them, are going to be even more prized, because that's the way in which you can differentiate yourself to some of these brands and being able to just have a freaking conversation about what's going on with this brand. My favorite way to Not only, so going back to the resulting thing, my favorite way to get information from the brand about what's on their roadmap or what's going on or why they hired us, whatever, is just like try to like connect with these people in person. Have a break bread with them, go to dinner. Wow, shocker. Maybe you fly into the city where this brand is located. If you've done 2 or 3 partnerships with them, they paid you a bunch of money. Maybe you go fly there. And you say, I'm going to be in town. I would love to meet some of your team and I'd take you out to coffee or whatever. Creators are like, what? I can do that? Yeah, you can do that. And imagine, number one, you're the only creator that's ever offered to do something like that. You're now, they assemble 20 people in their office for like this meeting, or you come into their offices, going to lunch, going to dinner, whatever. That's the way to solidify these ongoing relationships with brands versus the feeling that sponsorships are just these one-off business transactions.
Yeah. Which is, man, Justin, you're bringing up so many good points. I feel like also as a creator, like the part of it is like being relatable to other people and being able to connect with them in that way. So taking what is already working for you, maybe online with your personal audience, and then transferring it to what's actually could work with the brand, being a person and connecting and building relationships. That seems like a no-brainer. Plus it leads back to having fun. You get to travel.
You already have proven that you are influential and that people value what you have to say and that you're great at building connection. It's the same exercise. It's just with a different type of, maybe a little bit more corporate-y or professional audience, but you have the skill set. A lot of creators come to me and be like, I could never do this. I could never learn this. I'm not confident on blah, 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 blah. I'm just like in my room filming videos. I'm like, no, you are confident. Like you can be confident, but it's a learned, and it can be learned.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to switch gears here because we have a lot to cover here, Justin.
All right.
And I'm curious. I got a lot of curiosities around what we're talking about here today. I want to talk about the ARC framework, awareness, repurposing, conversion, and something that stood out to me that I would love to dig deeper on is a brand's sensitivity to pricing based on what type of campaign they're running. I thought that was really valuable. And I also thought that your distinction on how a conversion campaign would be the hardest to negotiate on was actually fairly surprising, because you said it yourself. You like read my mind as I was going through it. I was like, this one is going to have an immediate ROI. Why is this one the hardest to negotiate? Do you want to walk me through some of maybe the differences in those types of campaigns and why the brand's pricing is different for each?
One of the skills that I think I developed actually in business school was trying to be as succinct as possible with high level concepts, right? So if I'm like negotiating with a brand or I'm talking with a brand, I think a lot of creators get very intimidated thinking that how could I ever possibly understand this brand's objectives? They have hundreds of employees, millions of dollars, agencies, all the experts, and I'm just little old me, little old creator over here.
Little old me.
What could I possibly, little old me, what could I possibly, what value could I possibly bring to this conversation? And so this is why I distill a lot of the frameworks in my book into very, very easy things to understand. And so the ARC framework that you're mentioning, it's ARC, it's awareness, repurposing, conversion. 100% of the time that you work with a brand, it's going to be 1, 2, or all 3 of those things. 100% of the time. You do not need to overcomplicate it. And so your job is to just ascertain which goals the brand has. And so, when it comes to the price sensitivity, the reason that this is so, well, first of all, let's talk about why it's important that you ask this type of stuff, because you might be listening to this and be like, okay, this is like too theoretical for me, Justin. How does this actually help me as a creator? It's because you need to be charging different amounts depending on the brand's goals. So if you're someone who has a standard price or a standard rate or a place on your website where someone can go and book an ad read for your podcast, and you have zero conversation with the brand, you're leaving a huge amount of money on the table. And let me explain to your point about why this is the case. So let's do a quick definition. So awareness, what type of campaign in this? This is where the brand has a new feature, a new seasonal promotion. They're launching in the UK after only being in the US. So some sort of big announcement that they want as many people to know about as possible. That's awareness. R is repurposing. So the primary reason the brand wants to work with you is to take the content that you generate and use it in other ways. Not just you putting it on your platform. They want to put it on their website. They want to use it in an email newsletter blast. They want to run paid advertising with it, put it on an e-commerce partner. So content is oftentimes a big struggle for brands to create. And so they look at creators as perfect vehicles to actually get those assets in a cost-effective way. The C in the ARC framework is conversion, right? And this is the sales, right? The app downloads, the trial signups, the things that are much more attributable and measurable. And so let's explain. So what I have this chart in the book, in my book Sponsor Magnet, called basically I go down the price sensitivity of each of these campaign goals. So a lot of people think that, well, can't I charge the most, like you said, with a conversion campaign because it's driving actual sales versus the awareness campaigns where it's not really. So it's actually the opposite. And let me share a quick example by kind of working backwards here. So let's say that, the Nicholas and Tali show gets an average of 10,000 downloads per episode in the first 30 days. I don't know what the numbers are. I'm just making stuff up. Right. And then, and so this is what the brand thinks. Okay. 10,000 downloads. Okay. If we hired Nick to do a sponsored ad read on his, in an episode, we're going to assume that, let's say 10% of the people who listen are going to click the link in the show notes. Okay. That's 1,000 people. Of the 1,000 people that click that link, we're going to assume that about 25% sign up for a free trial. That's 250 people. Of the 250 people that do the free trial, let's say 20% convert to a paying customer, right? So that's of 20%, that's 50 paying customers. And we know as a brand that our software costs $10 a month and people stick around for an average of 10 months. So our lifetime value per customer is $100. So the 50 paying customers that we generate from Nick times $100, $5,000 is the money that we're hoping this promotion generates. But that's the break even.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't want to pay you $5,000. That's the whole reason they're doing influencer marketing, is to turn a profit. Right. And so they want to pay you a half, a third, a fourth, maybe less, depending on their risk tolerance. And so this is why it's so difficult to negotiate with the brand who has a conversion focused goal, because they have this math. It's called a CPA, a cost per acquisition, this math that they're beholden to. Their boss is breathing down their neck, being like, hey, you can't exceed this because we have to turn this profit here. Contrast that with an awareness-focused campaign, right? Is the boss breathing down this person, your contact's neck, being like, how many signups did we drive with that thing with Nick? It was like, no. Oh, wow, we got this many eyeballs and listens and views and comments and engagement. I call the metrics a little bit squishier. Mm-hmm. And so your negotiating leverage just absolutely skyrockets in that situation. Let's do one more example, a repurposing campaign, right? They come inbound saying like, hey, Nick, we'd love to do an ad read for you. And you say, hey, tell me about what would be your biggest, what would be a win if we were to collaborate as part of this? Like, I understand you're asking about an ad read, but what are you trying to get out of this? And they say, well, you know what? We just love your podcast. We love what you represent. And after you do the ad read, what we really care about is getting that read and, or maybe you actually doing it on camera and taking this clip and running paid advertising with it. That's what we care about the most. And so in your mind, you're like, okay, hold on a second here. They're telling me that they really care about is getting an ad at the end of this. So is it really serving them if I do an ad read? No, it's not. What's serving them is coming back and saying, hey, you know what? I can actually make 5 ads for you that I don't even put in the podcast. And it's going to be 5X, what the investment would be like. But that's what you said your goal is. And the beautiful part about this is that the amount that you can charge them now is completely detached from how many downloads you get on your podcast.
Which is great. I feel like a lot of times creators go into these things thinking, I don't have enough followers. I don't have enough listens, downloads, views, what have you. But I think you breaking down those different types of campaigns really just opens it up to be like, oh, I can actually just produce different types of content for different goals that ultimately will lead to a deal. Let's talk pricing. So with those campaigns, you ran through a few different pricing models, but it seems like the one you recommended, tell me if I'm wrong here, was the merit-based pricing model. Why do you typically recommend going that route as opposed to some of the other ones you mentioned, like cost plus or CPM or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, well, first of all, we go through this evolution when it comes to pricing. The first brand that reaches out, you've never done it, you're like, oh, I don't know how much to charge. Let me go ask my friend or DM my friend over here how much he charges or how much she charges. And so first of all, it's a terrible way to do pricing. Don't do that. Which is, I call this competitive pricing, because you just garbage in, garbage out. How did you not know that your friend also asked someone else who has no idea what they're doing, right? It's just like a bad way to model your pricing. And without going into super deep into each of the pricing models. So real quickly, it's competitive, it's cost plus, it's dynamic, and it's merit based. And so let's go deep on the merit based aspect, because I think that this is like the biggest unlock for people, is realizing that different brands might be willing to pay you different amounts for the same scope of work. So like one brand might be willing to pay you $5,000, then another brand is willing to pay you $10,000 for the same one YouTube video or 5 ad reads or whatever the deliverables are. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with this idea, but that's always struck me as interesting, because every company, every brand, even in client services, let's just not even talk about sponsorships for a second here. Like, or let's just talk about water.
Okay.
Sorry, let's go down to let's go to first principles here. Water is valued wildly differently depending on where you are, right? If you're in the forest and you're walking along a creek, how much is water? You can go down a running creek. Don't drink standing water. Yeah. It's free, right? It's $0, right? How much is water in your tap at your house? I mean, you're paying for it, right? But it's like cents for a cup, right? You go to the grocery store, bought a big bottle of 24 pack, 48 pack for $5 or whatever, it is, $6. Yeah. Go to a concert. How much is a Fiji? How much is water there?
Don't get me started.
It's the same. So of course this could be looked at as a commodity. But like, I think the same mindset, it's really important to understand that like your work, what you are water. Okay, everyone, if everyone's not following the analogy here, you are water. Yep. You're everywhere at all times. You're just cruising through life. No, but people value you the same thing differently depending on where they're at in their business. So if they are experiencing a really severe issue, they're a brand who is running a really, really critical campaign to their company, and they really need the right partners, and it's super time sensitive. It has to go live at this certain time. They may be willing to pay you a lot more money depending on their particular situation, even though it's the same asset that another brand would have generated for you. And so this merit-based ideology, this approach, is so important to get comfortable with this idea of charging different brands different amounts. This is an absolute game changer.
This is great. You're unlocking a lot of nuggets in my noggin to begin to implement and apply.
And we kind of got into like almost like a meditative state, pretending we were water there.
I was like, second, I hit the flow state with you for a second there.
Totally.
In line with the pricing as well, I do want to talk about something that I thought was, man, I got to stop complimenting you, Justin. You know what? Forget it. I'm not saying anything else was good. I'm just going to introduce this stuff. All right.
Oh man.
Tiered packages is what came up. And I think, of course, that's a go-to move, but something that you did inside of those tiered packages that I thought was the nugget for me is it wasn't necessarily additional work, but additional rights or like usage and things like that, which is a game changer because that means the actual work I have to do isn't necessarily equated to the package and tiers that they get to choose from. And I'll tee you up with the old DUE rule, DUE, deliverables, usage rights, and exclusivity. If you're open to it, walk me through how you can utilize those three to create packages that add value without necessarily adding more work to your plate.
Yeah, everyone. Oh, packages. Yeah, of course. I'll give them a bunch of different options. And, hopefully they'll choose the highest package and I'll make more money, this type of thing. I want to meet everyone where you're at, depending on where you're at in your creator journey. What most people do, man, is a brand comes inbound. If a brand has ever come inbound to you, usually they will ask for something very specific. Very often they'll say like, how much for this? How much for this particular thing here? And what most people do is they just spit back one number. They'd be like, oh, 500 or oh, 1,500 or oh, 10 grand or whatever it is. There's a bunch of reasons that is a huge mistake. The first of which being that they may not have even known that you had a newsletter. with 5,000 of your most engaged audience members on it that they would absolutely love to be able to amplify the campaign on. But because they found you on YouTube or they found you on a short form platform, they had no idea that you had this thing, because it's not like you publicize it much anywhere. And so what you do by providing packages to a brand with other content formats of ways in which you can amplify the campaign is help them understand your holistic presence and reach and other ways in which you can help to spread the word for them. So that's number one. But to your point, the do rule, which is another kind of negotiation cornerstone that I teach, is deliverables, usage rights, exclusivity. A lot of people, like you said, focus on the deliverables. It's like, okay, yeah, I could offer to do package 2, which is twice the work, or package 3, which is 3 times the work, or whatever. But like, do I really want to do that? Also, is that really that compelling of an offer to the brand? Because maybe I'm giving them like a discount. If you choose package 3, I'll give you a 10% discount or something. And that's really not that effective. Most brands don't want to choose that because especially if they've never worked with you before, the idea about doing multiple engagements, especially going back to what we were talking about earlier, what happens when they get into it and you're like super unprofessional, it's like pulling teeth, getting stuff from you. And so, oh God, we just signed the 6-month deal with this person. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to want to do that. And so what I talk about a lot is when you're putting these packages together, instead of varying it by quantity of deliverables, which is what most people do, there's all these other levers that you have that can help the brand understand why they should be exploring some of these other packages. So the U in the do rule is usage rights. So a lot of people don't, again, going back to the repurposing goal type from the ARC framework, there's a lot of value that brands get out of taking the content you generate and doing other things with it, right? Maybe they even want to put your freaking beautiful mug on their product packaging, right? Who knows, right? Like this has happened to a bunch of people that I have coached. Like they have their face on packaging or like an end cap in a grocery store. Like it's wild, but like, once you get to certain levels, like that's valuable to a brand, right?
Yeah.
And so like, how do you, that's an important thing as part of the partnership to negotiate for those rights. So the usage rights doesn't just have to be social media. Like it could be, they want to put your freaking face on their trade show booth. This happens. So I actually work with a lot of very niche creators, podcasters, entrepreneurs, and so on, who, like, just a quick example. So Dr. Alex, she runs a company called Digital Pathology Place.
No day.
So she's a veterinarian and she nerds out on this topic around digital pathology, right? And so she's not getting hundreds of thousands of views or downloads on her podcast. She's getting hundreds or thousands, but she's absolutely crushing it, bro, with brand partnerships, because think about who's in her audience. Right? It's the lab techs, it's the doctors, it's the pharmaceutical reps, it's the medical device folks. And the medical device, the biopharmaceutical company over here who has a $50 million marketing budget, they're sitting here thinking, how do we spend this money?
Yeah.
It's like kind of hard, right? Like, because they're super regulated, right? So they can't just like, buy, it's like you have to be thoughtful about where you're actually spending this money. So what do? I guess we're going to buy the ad in the prehistoric trade magazine sitting in the doctor's office that no one reads, because we've always done that. Google pay-per-click ads, maybe. Facebook ads, maybe. But what we should do? We should go hire Dr. Alex, roll out the red carpet for her, fly her out to our facility, have her speak on panels at our trade show, have her podcast live from our booth, and let's back up a dump truck full of money and drop it on her driveway for that privilege. Honestly, if you're sitting here listening to this thinking like, oh, sponsorships, it's just for influencers or whatever. No, in fact, the majority of the people that I work with are more like Dr. Alex than the lifestyle influencer dancing on Instagram. And so I think that this idea about, we talked about the usage deliverables, we talked about the usage rights, and then the exclusivity piece. This also is like valuable to a brand. If you're actually saying, hey, I'm not going to talk about any of your other competitors for a certain time period. So you're kind of like almost like a locked in ambassador.
Yeah.
For a time period. That is something the brand needs to pay you for, that privilege. And so, again, it could be the same amount of work in all of those packages, but you're varying the usage and the exclusivity, between those packages. But there's one more thing. There's one more thing I would be remiss if I did not bring up here, which was that there's even a next level to go beyond the usage rights and the exclusivity. It's varying the packages by the brand's objectives. So I think a lot of people, the mistake that they make is that they put the same types of deliverables in each package. So there's a YouTube video in every package. when in reality, there should be completely different things in each package. So for example, if you had an onboarding call with the brand or a discovery call and they told you a bunch of different objectives, because that happens, right? Oh, we want awareness and we want sales. And yeah, it'd be great if we got the content to repurpose and put it in our newsletter and all, they say everything. Well, that's why package 1 is going to be the awareness. It's going to achieve the awareness goal. That's going to be the YouTube video. That's going to be the dynamic ad insertion on the entire back catalog of the podcast, et cetera. Package 2 includes none of those things.
Yeah.
Package 2 is the repurposing goal. So that's where I'm going to make the 5 ads for you, unique ads that you can run meta ads with. Package C is going to be the conversion goal. That's where I'm going to do the newsletter blasts and the Instagram stories where every frame has a link sticker, or do a webinar in partnership with you that you can market to your audience where, it's all about getting leads and whatever. I'm just making stuff up here, but like, that's really the game changer, because now the brand realizes, wow, the only way that we can accomplish all our objectives is to pick the top package.
Mm-hmm. I like that. You're basically teeing up. The great thing about packages too that you're mentioning is the comparison between each of them. Like, I think that's great too. And also being able to tailor the prices to be like, this one is a little bit stretching our budget, but that's the one we really want. So that's the one we're going to go with. It's not quite the highest one, and being able to tier them that way too. Those are really valuable. In terms of exclusivity and things like that, in the same lane, I want to talk about the 3 main types of paid usage: licensing, amplification, and dark posts.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on those 3 bad boys, and when would you suggest to use each of them in terms of maybe which packages, bargaining chips, what works best?
Yeah. So quick definitions. Licensing is when the brand takes your content and uses it on their platforms, their owned and operated platforms, their social media, etc. Amplification is when you're posting it natively on your feed or your podcast or your YouTube channel or whatever, social media. And then they are actually putting dollars to amplify it, the native post that you make. So you may be either giving them like advertiser access to the back end of your Facebook or Instagram, or like they call it like a Spark ad code on TikTok, for example, where they just literally put additional dollars to ensure that content reaches people outside of the folks that organically follow you. And you can select the targeting for that type of thing. And so that's amplification. And then dark posts are an interesting one where you're still giving them advertiser access to your platforms, but people are not seeing this ad on your feed. So if they clicked on your profile photo to look at your grid or whatever, the ad will not show up there. And so this is actually can be a pretty effective method. Brand, like, creators love it because they don't have to like expose their organic audience to an ad, but brands love it because it's just way more effective to see an ad in the feed from a creator's profile versus their own as the brand. And so I think, I'm not super prescriptive about like what you should lead with when you're, I think it's like, first of all, educating yourself, like understanding the difference between these 3 things is half the battle. But then when you get into this conversation with the brand about understanding what their objectives are, you should then be prescriptive about which one sounds best. If awareness is really their goal, then probably amplification is the most important thing, because that will be able to ensure that it reaches the most eyeballs. But if they don't care about that, then you should not be trying to throw that into your packages, right? And so I think this is actually unrevealing maybe a subtle but important aspect here to negotiations, is just like every proposal should be different. Every proposal should be bespoke.
Yeah.
Rather than having this like prefix menu that you just say, hey brand, which one do you want? These are the 5 packages I work with every brand. Pick one. That does not feel great. Like if you've ever been like pitched a service like that, it feels icky, right? It's just like, okay, I'm just like another person being churned through this machine. And like, that feels gross, versus like, I listen to you deeply, and all of the things that I'm recommending to you here are just for you. I have never recommended this combination of things to anyone before because, it wouldn't make sense for them, which is why I recommend that page 1 in your proposal should be what I heard, which is the goals. It's literally a regurgitation of what they told you on that discovery call to give them this warm and fuzzy feeling that you were listening.
That's great. That's actually something I've been learning as well in terms of we talk about a lot, like productizing your offers so that your fulfillment is streamlined. And while that is true, that doesn't mean you can't on the front end position those things to be custom to the customer. And the reason I've learned that lesson too, somebody mentioned it to me, of course, but it gives exactly what you're saying. If you provide them standard packages where it's not tailored to them, you're thinking about yourself rather than thinking about them. And I think that is the biggest difference, because you can still keep the process simple while just changing how you're angling each of these things so that they feel exactly what you mentioned, heard. Like your process for fulfilling on a YouTube video is going to be the same every single time, but to a brand that needed a YouTube video and a still graphic or whatever, like that is the game changer.
100%. And I'm so glad you brought up this point, because you may still have prefix packages that you generally offer to people most of the time. But again, that's not a public facing document. That's something that you have that you use as the bones to the proposals that you put together and you tweak accordingly.
Yes, 100%. This is so good. Justin, there's just too much I want to ask you here. We talked about inside of these, what are we going to do? Jeez, I'm going to fly out. We're going to go to...
that was just such a wonderful exhale. It was, I crave that exhale. Like, that is just so good. I love it.
So good. Yeah. I just got out of the sauna right there. Finally free.
Oh yeah.
The tiers. We talked about how not having to do extra work based on how we position the usage rights and things like that.
Yep.
Talk to me about language for revisions to ensure that I'm not going to get hit with a bunch of unexpected edits at the end of this. And if I am, I'll be compensated accordingly.
Before we get into the nitty gritty contract language stuff, let me just, I'll
tee us up, baby.
I'll save everyone a bunch of time, actually, which is that always provide the brand with a concept of how you're going to bring this partnership to life, even if they're not asking you for one. I think this is the biggest struggle that most people have, is that they think what they want is a brand to be like, oh, we trust you. We just want it to be organic and authentic, and we love what you do. Just like do your thing, right? And creators are like, that's what I want. I want the creative freedom, right? The latitude to do my thing. You do not want that when you do brand partnerships. I'm just going to, like, everyone listening, you do not want that. You want to ensure that you and the brand are on the same page about what you'll ultimately bring to life. And so obviously you're going to slide up and down the robustness of this concept that you're delivering based on how intense the brand is. So if it's a pharmaceutical brand, you better be putting them like a word for word script in front of them so that the legal team can review it. Because if you say one errant word, you're going to have to redo it, revise it, etc. Versus a chiller brand, it might be worthwhile just getting a couple sentences in front of them, being like, hey, like this is generally kind of the direction that I want to do. It's this kind of vibe, and they give you the thumbs up. What you really want at this stage is them to say, oh, that's actually not what we had in mind at all. Perfect. That's exactly what you want them to say at this stage before you create anything, so you save yourself a bunch of headache. And so, yes, of course, we can chat through the kind of nitty-gritty contract language to, prevent these contentious situations, but you can avoid the contention altogether if you just do the concept. You send them a concept, and then, the feedback that they'll give you will just be pretty minor. It'll be pretty easy to fix with a voiceover or whatever type of content you create.
Yeah.
And so but of course you should still have language in your agreement that protects, protects yourself in the event. So for example, in the event that the brand decides to terminate the deal for whatever reason, they say, you know what, we decided not to run this campaign anymore. And you had literally submitted everything. It was like in the review process and it just hadn't been posted yet. And they decided to terminate the deal. A lot of contracts are written as such that they have that right, that they will not compensate you anything if they, because it'll say like they can terminate in their sole discretion at any time within 7 days written notice or whatever it is. Does that sound fair? That does not sound fair to me.
Not to
right?
me.
If you're not at all. You did all the work and now they're trying to abandon it. And so oftentimes what I advise is introducing language such as like milestones. So like, okay, if we started production, right? Like maybe you haven't delivered anything yet, but you're like, you had you'd shot already a bunch of stuff, and then they terminate, they probably should still compensate you because you like started doing the work already, right? And so maybe that's something like 25%. They owe you 25% of the work after they had already greenlit production, right? And then maybe it's, the example I mentioned just a second ago, maybe if they terminate after you'd already submitted the drafts and you were waiting for it to be approved, maybe that's 75% or 80% or 90%, whatever you want to do. And then if they terminate after it had been approved, but it hadn't gone live yet, maybe that's 100%, right? Because it's like you did everything and you were ready to go, but they just decided at the last minute. This actually happened to us, dude. We did a deal. I'm not going to name the brand. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but we literally did everything.
Yeah.
Everything. We turned it all in. We shot it. It was like literally just waiting with the legal department for review. Mm-hmm. And it had been a long time. And we were like, it was a pharmaceutical company. And when that happens, like you always in the back of your head are just like, okay, this is not a good sign because this is taking like a month, 2 months, during the review process. Like, what is going on here? Seasons are changing, the content we shot in summer and now it's like cold and whatever. But like literally they came back and said, you know what? We decided that we made an error actually doing this campaign. We decided it should not be targeting the type of consumers that you represent. And we're just going to cut you a check for 100% and you don't have to post it. And this was tens of thousands of dollars. So it was wild. And so like this stuff happens. Like you may think these are like esoteric examples that I'm sharing, but no. Like this stuff happens. And so again, that's why it's important to have this stuff in there to protect yourself.
That's so crazy. All right, I'm going to jump around here. Here we go.
Yeah.
The first thing you said, you talked about concepting. And you mentioned in the book, when a brand says, hey, we trust you, and the creators go straight into production, that's like a big red flag. I think you talking about providing them with the concept really sums that up. But I also know that feeling of when a brand does say, hey, we trust you, you feel really good. And you're like, oh, nice. They like really respect my work. I'm just going to jump right in. And then it leads to all of that mumbo jumbo. The next thing that I want to talk about is after a deal is done, you provide them with a super sweet report encapsulating all of the goodies. And I think the thing that I want to touch on, because we can run through there, and the thing that I wanted to point out was how to pitch the next campaign inside of there. But what I actually think I want to touch on, because I think this is probably going to happen to most folks, is you created this framework for how to follow up with brands afterward. But I want to know, what's the most underrated way we can follow up with brands without being annoying? I think that's what people are afraid of, is they don't want to annoy a brand to where they're like, oh, now they're really not going to work with me. But I don't think that's the case. And you got a great way to get around it. What would you say?
Well, the most annoying way is saying, hey, just wanted to follow up here. Do you have anything else for me? Oof. Do you have any other campaigns that you're running this year that I could help with? That's the most annoying version. And so if that's all you're doing, yeah, you should be embarrassed. You should cringe at that. Sorry, again, hold on a second.
Yeah, put the empathy hat
I'm
back on.
I'm empathetic. I'm not condescending. I got to put the empathy hat back on. Don't do that, right? Like, honestly, at the end of the day, like, just want to follow up here. That's irritating. But what you can do, what no one will ever get upset or frustrated at you doing, is providing value every time. And it could take the shape of something simple like, hey, I was just reading this article in this industry trade magazine, and I thought you would find it interesting based on what you're doing. I saw you did put out this press release about XYZ, thought this would be relevant to you, and you just send it over. And you're not saying at the end of that email, P.S., do you have anything for me? No, it's just like you're continuing to stay top of mind. And so the framework that you're referencing in my book Sponsor Magnet is called the Pino method. So I like wine, so Pinot Noir.
That's what's up.
So Pinot. And so basically it's a structure of what do you say for each follow-up. So it's basically like a series of 3 to 4 to 5 follow-ups that you should be doing when you're nurturing these brand relationships, and every time you're saying something different, right? And so the P, for example, is pivot. So if you pitch them something in the post-campaign report of like another idea or a seasonal campaign or whatever, you pivot to something else. Hey, you didn't like that idea? Great. Here's another idea. Here's a different idea. I saw you posted this thing on Instagram. That's really cool. I saw XYZ, or someone DM me. And asked about the product again, even though the campaign's over, they asked about it and they had an objection. Like, we should make we should talk about this in another post, that this is like a big objection people have. I in the Pino method is I forgot to mention. So it's like, I forgot to mention.
Yeah, that's good.
That I know we activated on YouTube, but I've also have this growing newsletter now, or this growing private community. I would love to have your VP of R&D or marketing come in and do a guest webinar. By the way, you got to pay for it, like this type of thing. And so, N in the Pino method is novelty. So this is where you're actually pitching them something that no one's really ever done. We talked earlier about this idea of doing lunch and learns, maybe either physically going to them. And April and I have done this like several times. Like we'll go and we used to do that at agencies that we worked with a lot, like media, PR agencies, et cetera. And there would be literally 20 different people. We would spend $300-$400 on catering lunch or whatever it was, $500. And there'd be 20 people in that room from all these huge accounts, like brands and all this stuff. And it would be like, come and like talk with us about like what it's like being YouTubers or like being creators, this type of thing. There's no slides. It was just like meet and greet type idea.
That's cool.
And do you know how much business we got from that $500 investment to like of lunch? It was like, we just continuously got business because they had a face to the name. They got to, you break bread with someone, it's just totally different. The rapport that you build doing something like that. And so the novelty is like, you don't have to do that necessarily, but how come you can't do this virtually? You say, hey, let's do a Zoom, lunch and learn or coffee and learn or whatever with, a bunch of people can log on at lunchtime and chat about what I'm seeing on the ground. And this is like a big one, is like when TikTok was going to get banned or I don't know if it's so well, but like, imagine the pitch being like, hey, here's how I'm thinking about my content strategy. Yeah. Now that TikTok might go away. And here's what I think, feel free to, ask me questions about this, because brands are thinking about this too, of like, if TikTok goes away, what the heck are we going to do? Are we not going to market there? Are we going to shift to another platform? Oh, wow. This creator's offering to like, let us ask them questions about this. Yeah. This is amazing. This is genius. Right. And so the novelty of that, you think anyone else is doing that? No one else is doing that. And so this is really what I mean in terms of how to be not annoying when following up, is just providing value. And really at the end of the day, it's also realizing that like the point of a pitch is not to get the deal. That's not the point of a pitch. The point is to get on their radar and help them understand that when they're ready to recruit for a next campaign, they think of you. That's what the point of all of this nurturing is, because the likelihood of you reaching out when they're like ready to go, this is perfect, is super low. It's so low. That's not the point of it. The point is just to stay on top of mind. Yeah.
This is great. This is great, Justin. I'm going to dive into a couple of my thoughts. I got to knock it off saying this is great. The first thing you mentioned, the P in the pivot, something that I really like, and this is something I've been trying to do more, is when you pitch an idea, because they can reject an idea without rejecting you. And I love that. So when you pivot, snaps in the chat, baby. When you pivot, you're pitching another idea, which, like you mentioned, is opening the door to something else. The next thing, I love the novelty aspect of breaking bread with people. I think that ties back into, relationships being at the forefront. And then the last point you mentioned is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think there's a lot of overlap here. Like when somebody's creating an offer for a business, I think they often think that that is the thing they're going to sell or fulfill on, kind of like how we mentioned earlier. But the point of an offer is to get somebody on a call with you so you can talk through what their actual needs are. And that strikes me as very similar to what you just mentioned. That
100%.
And I think that's the missing nugget, that you can still engage in the conversation and then get to the real root of it, but you need something to go off of, like, for that conversation to start.
Dude, if there's anyone listening or watching this who has a background in sales or marketing, you have a massive leg up. I'm just going to tell you this right now, because if you can simplify this idea around brand partnerships to, it's literally just a sales conversation. This is what it is. And I tried not to intimidate creators too much by talking about this in the book. I did say that, like, my whole sponsorship wheel, I've got my framework right here. It's a sales pipeline. That's literally what it is. And so you have sales conversations at all of these different stages with these partners, and it's all about assessing their needs. You have a solution, but it's about assessing their needs and ensuring that you're able to adequately overcome the objections of your prospect, which is the brand, and ensure that you're positioning a sponsorship of you and your business in a way that they understand that it'll help get them closer to their objectives. And so this is it. At the end of the day, boom, succinct, mic drop. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Give me another little succinct one-liner here. That doesn't have to be one line. It can be anything. Well,
okay, I got a bunch. You're not just a creator, you're a consultant.
Oh, that's good.
It's the same idea, having this consultant mindset. It's like, I always joke, I love this little anecdote. It's like, imagine you like go to the doctor and you have this ailment, right? You go in, you're in the waiting room, twiddling your thumbs. They come in and you like they sit down, you open your mouth to like tell them about all the problems that you're having, your symptoms. And they're like, shh. And they like put their finger to your lips creepily. And they take out their prescription pad, write you a prescription, say, bye, random prescription, walk out. You're like, what just happened here? And this is what you're doing when you provide, going back to those fixed packages or fixed offers to these brand partners without ever knowing what their challenges are. And so I don't know. I like sharing these like visuals because I feel like these are the things that people remember when it comes to these like, interactions that they're having with partners.
Definitely. Okay, let's get rid of all the frameworks here, Justin. Get rid of all of them.
Frameworks.
Zero frameworks.
Trash can. Let's go.
You get one principle to help the old creators get more sponsorships. What's that going to be? What's that one principle that they listen to this and they didn't listen to anything that we just said for an hour? They just ignored the whole thing and just sat through it in the car. And now they're here and they just check back in. What's the one thing that they need?
Dude, I've got a great one for you. Be a human. I think it's really difficult sometimes to remember that there's like a human on the other side of this email or an actual human on the other side of this interaction on the phone call or something. This is a human who wants to succeed professionally in their career. They want to be liked at work. They want to be loved at home and their family and friends. They have aspirations personally, and sticking your neck out for anyone in a corporate setting is scary because if it blows up, you look like an idiot. You look bad to your boss, to your peers. No one wants that. And so your job literally is to be a human and understand that there is a human on the other side of this. And your entire job is to make them look good. That's it. That's your entire job. And so if you can have that mindset of like, what are the things that I could do to make this person look good? For example, you mentioned the post-campaign report. I know, because I read Sponsor Magnet, that these brands they have to put together their own internal reporting, right? So they got to put together a PowerPoint and, they worked with 10 people and how did it go and what were the views like and whatever the goal was, how many sales we generate, et cetera. This reporting is happening. So how can I make this person's life easier? I'm going to go to them and say, hey, when is your report due? And what type of information, what format would be the most helpful for me to deliver this information to you? An Excel spreadsheet. I am going to put together my own, report that will give you some insights here. But like, do you need the raw data? Like, what is the most helpful for you? Like, how thoughtful of an offer is that if you're the brand, right? For you receiving something like that from the creator versus having to chase them down for their screenshots of their analytics or their metrics, right? Putting together, one thing I talk about in the book is shooting a testimonial for the brand.
Yeah.
That makes your contact look like amazing, right? Saying like, oh man, Shelly was so on it. She was amazing. I absolutely loved working. I can't wait to work again. My audience loved it. Blah, 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 blah. And then Shelly's going to drop that in the company Slack and look amazing. So again, it comes, this is not just with sponsorships. This is just like life. Just like be a good human and good things will happen.
Yeah. Geez, I'm really internalizing that one. Because there's so many overlaps. You could take that to anything, any sort of fulfillment. I'm like thinking through of all the things that I can like now follow up on to provide a better experience on for folks. And I feel like
what? Let's go.
Ooh, I think even after a podcast like this, like a few weeks from now, what if you got a report like that said all the lovely things people are saying about you from your guest interview?
Oh my God. I've literally I've been on hundreds of podcasts and I've never gotten that ever.
That's what I was saying. So
think about that. I would like think about how I would look at you if I got. I would tell all my friends, dude, you got to go on. his podcast. Like it was right. So the word of mouth would spread, my opinion of you, and I would start introducing you to people I knew, business relationships, like just that simple act of, or especially creating something shareable, social proof, like, you know, a click to tweet graphic.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same. If anyone here is like selling things directly, like maybe you have, you've thought of creating swipe files, swipe copy for affiliates. Let's say you have other people are referring to your company. It's the same idea. Like what kind of swipe copy could you create for your guests or something to like spread the love for, you know, for you, or you know, shout you from the rooftops.
Yeah. Total game changer. It really is. Cause I mean, I have my own process for these things that I think is really personal, but it's always like, it's always a little more intimate of a gift. So it's like, it's things I don't really share. It's like personal anecdotes, but providing a more, comprehensive thing, definitely to what you're saying, I think is true. And you could, we do a lot of shoots. Like I do a lot of local shoots through my business, and like sometimes I'll treat them as like one-off things. And that's like, it's ongoing, but it's sporadic. But imagine if every single one of them got that report instead of the monthly report or whatever, like our, you know, our consistent feedback loop is, you know, shortening the time, making it more comprehensive. And like you mentioned, highlighting the key players. This is all so applicable.
Well, dude, and imagine, okay, this is your version of the post-campaign report. You are pitching them on a new project based on an insight from the last project. So you're being like, hey, I heard you say this one thing during the shoot, and that's a great idea. We should do a shoot about that. And here's my vision for it. Boom. When do you want to do this?
It's so good. Not to completely derail us here, but I've been thinking also about this idea of in sales, how you typically, like a lot of times you have the inkling to sell when somebody reports back to you that they're really happy about something, which is cool. Like that's fine. But really the best time to do it is when they have another need. And it's like you just mentioned, when they say that they have a need and there's this point of deprivation of where they're at and what they actually need and where they want to go, which might be seen as negative in the moment, that's when to sell. So it's like you can finish this really good thing and provide them with that, but you're also touching on what you said, the pain point. The pain is still there for something else. I think that's like the launching pad there.
Also, this is a very, very important thing we need to agitate for a second here, which is that when there is any sort of perceived negativity or neutrality associated with the experience or something, you know, that happened during the engagement, actually, rather than ignoring the elephant in the room and being like, everything was great, let's sugarcoat it, it was awesome. Yeah. You being like, hey, I know that thing happened during this shoot, or, you know, for a creator, I know that we got some like negative comments about XYZ, about it's too expensive, or it tastes terrible, or it sucks, or whatever. Rather than just like pretending that doesn't exist, literally highlighting that in your report, being like, I actually got 10 comments about this. And I actually think that we should do another pulse of this content talking about how there's a reformulation and how it tastes great now and how it doesn't suck. Because maybe these people did not realize that there was a reformulation. And so actually having a low enough ego to actually lean into the neutral and negative feedback that you're getting it's a game changer, because no one's doing that. Everyone wants to stick their head in the sand, pretend that didn't happen, pretend it's awesome, you know, puppies and rainbows. It's like, no, you're the person who is like, actually, here's a bunch of opportunities for us to re-educate the market. That's why they're going to hire you again. Opportunities
is the right word. I used to be very intimidated and worried about that exact thing, because I thought they would associate the negative thing with either me or whatever. But in reality, if you're thinking about the other person, you just uncovered that thing that they actually need solving for. It's a beautiful cycle.
And well, importantly, it could happen. Like some short-sighted brands could have that negative association, but there's nothing that you can do. You did your part. So I think it's like, you know, people may be like, yeah, but that happened to me one time and they like never worked with me again. And yeah, of course, on the margins, there's going to be people who just don't understand it. But like, trust me, the majority, if you can be objective about this, the majority of the people will appreciate you being clear-eyed about this.
100%. Justin, where can people find your book? Where can they get more of you?
Dude, sponsormagnet.com is the absolute only way. Although I must say, audiobook, if you are excited, it is it will be out by the time this airs, more
Beautiful.
than likely.
Beautiful.
I already submitted it. It's pending. So
Okay.
unless this podcast is coming out in the next 24 hours, it will be out by the time it will be out by the time this airs. But I'm very excited because I did something very special for the audiobook. Can I tell you about it?
Please, I'd love it. Yeah.
So I actually released the audiobook, not intentionally, but basically like 5 months after the paperback and digital version of the book came out, just because I didn't have the bandwidth to be able to record the audiobook at launch. But what happened was that thousands of people have read the book now and like learned a bunch of stuff, taken action, and gotten amazing results. So I literally have hundreds of testimonials of people who've read the book. And so I was like, you know, it'd be cool if I shared some of those people's stories in the book.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed 8 creators. So for each step of my wheel. So at the end of each chapter, like the pitch chapter and the negotiate chapter, I interviewed someone specifically about how they took those frameworks in that chapter and got a crazy brand deal or sponsorship. So it's super special, and all sorts of different types of creators, different niches, different platforms. I've never heard an audiobook that does something like this. I've heard interviews and stuff, but like not in this way. And so I'm really excited about it.
Heck yeah. And tell me that link again. Where will they be able to find it?
Sponsormagnet.com.
Love it. Sweet. And that's also going to be in the show notes when this comes out. If it hasn't been said enough, there's so many great fundamental principles in here that apply to business overall, which is why I think it's such a valuable book. It's going to be evergreen. This is evergreen for sure. So well done, Justin. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, man. Round 2 in the books, round 3 incoming.
That's right. Bye. See you. Bye-bye.